David Gropman, you're the production designer for the Netflix limited series Ripley about the title con artist scheming his way through Italy. I know you shot a lot of the series on location. Around how much would you say was location work versus sets built on stages?
I think the number is 7 sets on stage, large and small, and about 200 locations.
And on a show where the locations are so important to the story and the visual
Sure.
style, how long and how involved was that scouting process?
Well, Daniel, I started in October of 2019 and scouted in Italy. I was started by a number of weeks in New York scouting locations, and then in Italy until March 11th, where I caught the last plane home to New York and had about 8 months off, like the rest of the world. And then back in Italy on the 3rd of January 2021. We had like 6 months of scouting then, scouting and pre-production then. Um, we had a lot to prepare. We had a lot to find and a lot to prepare.
And how difficult is it to scout locations when you're in the present day and the project is set in the 1960s?
Um, in Italy, not so hard because there's so much history there, which is not to say that, every production designer's, every art department's, burden is to make sure that there's not a whiff of anything that predates, postdates 1960. But so much to choose from. And, I've been lucky enough to work in Italy before, twice before, so already familiar with a lot of locations there. And so that part was just pure joy. I always say like the two best starting points for a production designer is once you get the script to do the research and then the scouting. And when you're scouting, even though you're going to build a lot of scenery, um, that scouting tells you so much. We're lucky enough to be in the real place where the story is going to unfold. Um, but you just learn so much. You learn so much from walking the streets, from finding your way around a corner and seeing something that hadn't occurred to you before. We took advantage of a lot of the um, amazing architecture that was created during the time of fascism in Italy, but created a lot of spectacular architecture, things that we used to create the train station in Rome, to create the American Express offices, both in Venice um, and in Naples. Uh, with this story that travels so much through the country, and Lord knows Tom sees his highs and lows as a visitor to that country. I was very aware of trying to find, as one would always do, is to find architecture and environments that mirror that part of the story that we're telling at that time, but also almost like a piece of music, to sort of be aware of rhythms and when the music's going fast, when it's slowing down, when it's reflective. And so you figure that in, especially over 8 episodes, you want to make sure that there's a line that goes through everything that you are creating, which is true to each moment of that storytelling, but also how it's going to flow through those 8 hours of television.
And those 8 hours were shot in black and white, which is a really striking feature of the visuals
Yeah.
in the series. How did that affect your approach to locations and sets? Like, what kind of new considerations were there?
And of course, I'm like, even when I'm working and I'm in the middle of production and dealing with directors and producers, you kind of want to make everything seem very simple and straightforward. Like, no magic here. And then, the moment arrives and you've sort of hopefully hit the nail on the head. Um, because all of my research that I was looking at, which was voluminous, was in black and white. And because, of course, even though the story is 1960, 1961, nothing should be brand new. So you're always looking minimum of 10 years in the past for your research and your reference. But of course, our story goes all the way back to the 16th century. Um, so everything you're looking at is in black and white. And it's where I start with most of my research on films, even contemporary. I'm just some designers, go to artists and painters and other films. I always start with photography if I can. Obviously, when it got to Caravaggio, there were no photographs to take advantage of, but then I had to go to the paintings. So my whole world before I started creating anything or scouting a location was black and white. And then when you start scouting, you're taking your location photos or reference photos, and then you're going back at the end of the day and put it on your computer and look at everything in black and white. So exactly, or I felt I knew exactly where I was going, where I wanted to push something a little bit more in terms of contrast, just how to calibrate things.
And you mentioned the artwork in the film, especially Caravaggio, who's a
Yeah.
major thematic factor. Did his artwork come into the design itself?
Um, well, probably I would say even more so in the cinematography than in the production design. But I'm always very aware of light. Even for all the films I've done before, I'm always very kind of careful with color. I always like to have a really controlled color palette and make sure the focus is always on the story and the actors in front of that environment that I'm offering up. Um, so I don't know, for me, in a way, because I've always tried to be very controlled with color and therefore very aware of light and shadow and how what I'm giving to the cinematographer to kind of help tell the story. Um, Eliminating color in this instance, for me, got me to, I feel like, the purest form of who I want to be as a designer. I really felt that I was finally able to tell a story. I'm always saying in interviews that I always try to tell the story with as few brush strokes as possible. And eliminating color was the final bit of that story to kind of take me to a place that I feel like I had wanted to be for a long time.
And I noticed that stairways are a recurring motif throughout the
Yes.
series. How, did that factor into your work? Like, did you become an expert basically in Italian stairs?
I almost lost, let's see, I think yeah, I'm gonna say that um, all of us took a little bit of a beating because every time you see Tom and Marge and Dickie make their way up a flight of stairs, up and down a flight of stairs. Just imagine how many times I had to do that in scouting with the director, then to do it again with my crew, then back again to make all the corrections on the path of every one of those stairs going up and down in Trani. So yeah, that was a big part of the experience. There were stairs in Natrani. Dickie's villa actually was not in Natrani. That was in Capri. That was the whole other sort of set of stairs to deal with. The stairs in Tom's apartment, you can imagine that wasn't necessarily the first apartment building that we scouted. So again, going up and down a lot of stairs, scouting apartment buildings. Yeah, that was a big part of our life.
And Tom Ripley finds himself in various locations, hotels, residences throughout the series. Did you want his physical spaces to reflect sort of his character arc? Some are grander and more confident, and others are sort of he's in a
No,
worse way
if
off.
you were just to take the multitude of hotels and apartments and palazzi that Tom lives in, you can imagine every one of those, right? You want to be on the nose. You want to be telling the story correctly. Probably never more fun than the first time Tom checks into what we call the Excelsior Hotel in Rome and goes up to this room, which gets this great double take by the actor because he can't believe the splendor of it, and then doesn't get a chance to spend one night in that suite, and finds himself checked into the Hotel Boulevard, many stars down from the Excelsior. Yeah, I mean, I have to say, as I put together my own photos of finished sets, one of my favorite things are all the different hotel rooms that he stayed in, not even taking into account his palazzo in Venice and his apartment in Rome, but all those hotel rooms, because everyone had to tell a different story, and everyone had to have a place to put a typewriter for Tom to work on his next con.
What would you say was your favorite part of working in Italy?
The food. No, like I said, I've been lucky enough to work there. This was my third project there. It's a wonderful culture. The crews that we work with in every instance have been fantastic. The talent level of those crews, which is not just their skill, but it's a whole history of culture, especially when it comes to filmmaking. And so that is a great pleasure. And then the fact that in two of the films there, I was based in Rome, one I was based in Venice, and you can imagine every moment that you're not working, you're still surrounded by this amazing culture and inspiration and flavor of life. And that's,
Well,
of course, mention the pasta.
of course, the pasta, certainly. Well, I want to congratulate you on your work on the series. And thank you so much for talking with me about it. It's been a
You bet,
pleasure.
Daniel. Yeah. It's something I'm really proud of, I have to say. It's, Steven Zalian's work on it is amazing. And I'm very, very lucky to have been a part of that.